The 7 greatest analog supercars of all time. Modern performance machines are amazing, but there's something to be said for seasoning over technology. Friends, take a look around, because we are living in the most exciting automotive era of all time. Yes, better than the 1920s and 1930s with the Duesenbergs, Bentleys and Delahayes. Better also than the swinging 60s with Jags and Astons, and better than the late 60s, early 70s American muscle car era, or the rise of the modern supercar through the 1980s. There is a notable difference, however, with the cars of today versus legends of yesteryear. Call it digital versus analog, which got me thinking about some of the greatest analog supercars of all time that featured rear-wheel drive, manual transmissions, no electronic assists, and no power steering. Time now then to honour some fairly recent and not so recent supercars that required considerably more driver involvement to realise their full potential. Ferrari F40. You knew the F40 would be here. To this day, there are many people who consider it to be the best Ferrari ever built. It's also arguably the last truly analog Ferrari. The F50 had electronic dampers that automatically adjusted based on vehicle parameters, but in the end it really doesn't matter. This is the F40 we're talking about. It looks fantastic, it sounds fantastic, and it requires total driver involvement and a major set of balls to hit its top speed of 201 miles an hour. Ferrari 288 GTO. The GTO might not be the most iconic Ferrari, but it deserves its place here for one good reason, and that is because the F40 wouldn't exist without the 288, the machine many people consider the first real Ferrari supercar. It's mid-engined, dead sexy, and a complete handful for any driver who dares to open up the 2.9-litre twin-turbo V8. Lamborghini Countach. Here's another car that had to be on this list. Much has been said about the Countach's driving characteristics, and most of it isn't flattering. But newsflash, who cares? Just look at it. This car was designed over 40 years ago and it still looks futuristic. It's been the dream car for multiple generations of petrol heads. It's the reason Honda Civic owners cut up their doors so they open up instead of out. It has a V12 that makes the best Italian supercar sound of all time. It's a Countach. Wrestling with the wheel, manhandling the shifter and mastering its movements is part of the experience. 930 series Porsche 911 Turbo. Speaking of mastering a car, there isn't another machine on 4 wheels that epitomizes lift-off oversteer better than the original 911 Turbo. If ever there was a car to benefit from electronic assist, this was it, and honestly, it just might be what's kept the 911 around so long. Modern 911s can still be tricky even with prolific assists, but back in the day, it was a car you had to learn and respect, and be patient with until you either mastered it or died trying. Series 1 Jaguar E-Type. Time to step into the 1960s for perhaps the best looking car of all time. And for those who want to say this isn't a supercar, I have one word for you. Context. In the early 1960s, when everything else was riding on solid axles with drum brakes, the E-Type showed up with disc brakes and fully independent suspension. When cars were struggling to top 100 miles an hour, the E-Type did 150. Obviously, it had no traction control or ABS, but it did have a manual gearbox, and power steering didn't show up as an option until the Series 2 cars in 1968. Duesenberg Model SJ. I need to stretch the rules just a little bit for the doozy, because despite being a product of the 1930s, this car did have power steering. That's offset, however, by most models having a non-synchronized manual transmission. If you don't know what that means, try shifting your manual without using the clutch. Still, these cars were hand-built and ultra-exclusive, and they were also supercharged and could hit 100 miles an hour at a time when most cars did 30, and when most roads were dirt. McLaren F1. Did I save the best for last? That's completely subjective, but the McLaren definitely takes a trophy for being the most extreme analog street car ever built. While Japanese manufacturers were developing complex torque vectoring all-wheel drive systems and computerized turbocharged engines, the McLaren F1 was hitting 240 miles an hour naturally aspirated, without traction control, ABS, power steering, or power brakes. It's a testament to the engineering that went into the F1's development, and it absolutely lives up to its legendary status. What other analog supercars can you think of that should have been on this list? Don't forget to like this video and make sure you subscribe for more cool stuff like this.